Last week, we started and we explored some powerful thoughts about Tohu and Tikkun, and the feedback we received about last week's shiur was incredible. It really spoke to people, and I decided to go a bit deeper into that idea that we explored last week, but let's give a basic recap. We explored an idea that is brought in Kabbalah, and that is when Hashem created the world, he first created a different world. And when we're talking about worlds, we're obviously not talking about physical worlds. We're talking about things that are separate from Hashem, at least in their consciousness. And let me explain what I mean. Hashem, God, use the analogy of a sun. When a sun is shining, nothing exists. Everything burns up in the sun. In order for something to exist by the sun, it's only if the sun holds itself back and allows that thing to exist. Otherwise, the sun would burn the thing up. So too, in order for a world to be created, by definition, what that means is tzimtzum. Hashem has to contract himself. He has to hold back his light, and that allows something to exist. An analogy in our lives, you're raising a child, and at some stage you have to step back and allow the child to stand on their own 2 feet. If you're enmeshed and if you're shining your light too much on them, you're not going to allow them to develop their own independence. Hashtag South African syndrome. Overload love on your kids instead of allowing them to stand on their own 2 feet. So Hashem has to contract his light and allow to the world to stand. So when Hashem created the worlds, he first created the world of Tohu. What is the world of Tohu? Tohu is spelled Taf, Hey, Vav. Tohu is chaos. This is a world of intense emotion, but non-regulated emotion. In other words, chesed, kindness, is on fire. Gevura, discipline, is on fire. There's no nuance. There's no integration. There's no balancing one another. There's no one energy coming to the other energy and saying, let's balance each other out. No, I am this, and this is the only truth there is. And you're this, and you're the only truth there is. Emotion without intellect. Or in the words we used last week, a lot of orot, a lot of energy, a lot of light, but no kalim, no ability to cope with it, no ability to hold it. In other words, extreme talent, extreme energy, but no balance. And you find very often people who are extremely talented or skilled in a certain area, they're often off balance. It's rare that you find somebody that's a genius in an area of life and their life is still a life of balance. Why? Because they're in that life of incredible talent, there's so much fire, there's so much passion that it's hard to regulate it and sit there saying, okay, I still have to balance this with a job and with a family, etc. And that's why sometimes when you say, wow, my kid is so talented, it's a blessing, but it could also be quite a challenge. Why? Because it shakes the balance. And that's why you often find that people that are artsy are usually non-conventional. Not because they're choosing to be that way, but when the light, when the aura is so intense, and the kalim and the vessels, in other words, the human capacity, the maturity is not on equal level to that light, it creates chaos. Another analogy to give it is the difference between being a teenager, an adolescent, and an adult. And I'm not talking about specifically age, because there's adolescents who act like adults and adults, unfortunately, who act like adolescents. But in general, the stage of adolescence is intense emotion, intense feelings, intense experiences, intense searching, but not integrated, not balanced, chaotic mood swings and hormones and just chaos. On the other hand, it's the time of often the most creativity, the most growth, the most potential, the most light, the most, transformation. The world gets transformed by young people. However, it's light that's not contained. There's no kalim, there's no vessels. That is the world of Tohu. The world of Tohu is light, but without the vessel. What is that vessel? When we say vessel, what do we mean? We don't mean literally a cup. What we mean is an ability of not only holding the light, but integrating it in a way that does not destroy me, but brings me to peace, brings me to healthy balance. And therefore, often teenagers will struggle with relationships, and relationships are very volatile. Relationship with themselves. Often teenagers will do things, they'll experiment with some stuff that are not a bit conventional. Why? Because there's a lot of light, but it has not settled yet. The world of Tohu is the world of unsettled stuff. It's pure energy. That world exploded. That world, as it be, it didn't last. There was a shviras hakelim, in the words of Kabbalah, the vessels broke. There was too much light. Literally, the cup couldn't hold the light. But what's the message of that? That's a nice Kabbalistic concept. The message is, as we started exploring last week, that often that is the problem of lack of unity. Where does lack of unity start from? When I am full on fire, and you're full on fire, and each one of us is convinced that we're the truth, and we don't find the necessity of hiskalelus meaning integration, interdependence, appreciation of one another. So the same emotions and the same intellect that exist in the world of Tohu exist in the world of Tikkun, the world that works. The only difference is how much of that light is contained and balanced. In the world of Tikkun, which is the world that Hashem created after the first world, the world that we live in, there's much less energy. Hashem's light is not as revealed. The intensity of spirituality is not as intense as it was in that world. And therefore, most of us still can live balanced lifestyles. It's not easy, but the mere fact that we can is already incredible. Hashem contracted the light incredibly. Just think how much light Hashem had to hide in order for you and I to be able to sit here and not get burnt up by the awareness. Think about souls that live in Gan Eden, that live in heaven. They're burned up in Hashem's light. Even there, Hashem has to contract the light so that the soul can still be somewhat an independent entity and not get burned up in the flame. But could you imagine thinking of your ancestors, your loved ones who are in heaven and basking in Hashem's light? If we had that exposure in this world, we wouldn't be able to live. We wouldn't be able to cope with our lives. How can you go and just shop and live your life? And I'm not saying that in a negative way. We have to shop and we have to live our life. But if Hashem's light's right in front of you, you can't handle it. It explodes. And that's why, as I said, very often super spiritual people cannot live balanced lifestyles because they see the godliness everywhere. So how can I just go and, whatever, take a shower and eat food and spend time in the kitchen? I mean, come on, materialism. I'm supposed to be on a spiritual level, but Hashem doesn't want that. Hashem wants me to live a physical life, not materialistic, not get fully engraved in it and fully part of it that I lose my sense, but to live a physical life, to live a normal life, to live a dignified life, to drive a car, to sit in and live the pleasures and beauties of life. So how much did he have to contract himself in order that you and I can live in this world? Incredible. So in this world that we live in, the light is fully contracted. There's total ha'elem, total concealment. The word for that in Hebrew for the globe, for the universe, is olam, right? We even use the word tikkun olam, fix the world. The word olam comes from the same source as the word ha'elem, hidden, ayin lamed mem, hidden. This world is called olam because it's God's hiding. Hashem's hidden over here. There's a helem v'hester, there's a total cover up on Hashem's light. That's the only way you and I can exist. If he shined his light, we cease to exist. So, in this world, we live in the world of Tikkun, where there's a lot of vessel, there's a lot of, balance, but very little light. In the world of Tohu that was here before, there was a lot of light and not a lot of ability to containment. And the ultimate level of balance is to take the lights of the world of Tohu, that incredible energy, the adolescent fire, and the maturity of adulthood, the maturity of Tikkun, and bring both. Because Tikkun needs Tohu. Because if you only live in the world of Tikkun, there's not enough energy to work with. Tohu is full of energy. And that's why the original world that was here, the world of Tohu, never left. It exploded, but the sparks are all around us. And that's why you might have heard the Kabbalistic term, elevating the sparks. Tikkun olam. What is that? That's taking the sparks of the world of Tohu, which are all around us, and elevating them. In other words, giving them full integration, taking the light of that world and the containment and the maturity of this world, fusing them together and creating a perfect world. Or in another way to put it, taking the passion of adolescence, taking the maturity of adults, and each one not putting the other one down, but appreciating each other and using that to integrate an incredible energy. So interesting, today we use the definition Tikkun Olam, fix the world. But the truth is, from a Kabbalistic perspective, it's very different. This world is the world of Tikkun. Olam means the hidden. And we're here to fix that helem, that olam, that covering over, that hiding of godliness, and bringing the light of Tohu back here. In other words, this world that we live in is not ideal. Why? Because there's so little light. The world of Tohu is not ideal because there's no way to contain the light. And therefore it causes division and just intolerance. It's like a bunch of talented people in a room and nobody can actually say, you know, you're also talented. No, I'm the most talented. You're clever. No, I'm more clever than you. Nobody could create space. The ultimate integration is taking the light of Tohu, the world, the vessels, the containment, the maturity of Tikkun, and integrating them both. I want to give a story. It's a very dramatic story, what I'm going to tell you, but it brings this point home. It's not your typical story, and you'll see what I mean. There was a city in Russia that was called Kudainov, and there was a Rebbe there called the Kudainov Rebbe, not a very famous Rebbe, but a very holy Jew. Hundreds of years ago, whatever, 100, 150 years ago. The story goes that one time the Tsar traveled through the city, and he saw a certain Jew that was standing on the side of the road, and the Tsar decided to chepe to kind of bother this Jew. And he tells him, go bow down to a cross. And the Jew says, no. Well, I'm the Tsar. No. The Tsar was furious. So he calls over one of his non-Jewish peasants and says, I want you to defecate on this cross. In other words, he was going to see if this person is as strong-willed as the Jew and stand up to the Tsar and not disrespect it. Well, the guy does. Kind of does his needs on the cross. And the Tsar is furious because the Jew is more courageous than the non-Jew. So he kills this non-Jewish fellow and he lets the Jewish fellow go, and the Tsar leaves the town. Now, that's a great story of sanctifying God's name. But here's where the story takes a strange turn. Later that day or that week, the Kudainov Rebbe heard this story. And he said, I don't know how to say this in a polite way, but I'm worried that this Jew is going to have a nervous breakdown very soon. What? He says, I'll tell you. This Jew is a simple person. Kind of lives in the here and now, never imagined things, never intellectualized. He never prepared himself intellectually and emotionally for this experience. So what happened was the neshama light, the energy, the courage he needed to stand up to the Tsar was so beyond his capacity that it's actually going to unbalance him. And unfortunately, that's what happened. This fellow had a nervous breakdown, just lost his mind. Again, it's a very delicate story, but it's a very powerful story. Why is it a powerful story? Because what it shows you is that, yes, we all have moments of greatness. But if it's just a light of Tohu and no Tikkun, it's going to break you. That's why so many celebrities lose their balance. That's why so many people who achieve fame or financial success lose their balance. Why? Because there's too much light and not the ability, not the maturity to contain it. That's why personally I'm so against children who are pushed to be super successful and famous and perform at a young age. Even if they're super talented, they're not ready for it. They don't have the maturity to balance. Even me as an adult, I don't think I'm ready for certain things. Hopefully later on in my life, I'll be ready for it, and Hashem should allow me the opportunities. But I know that if certain events happen to me of exposure, they would imbalance me right now. I'm not ready for it. Because that is what the light of Tohu and Tikkun is. It's having intense energy, but being able to contain it. Being able to integrate it. So you're going to shiurim every single night, and you're learning Tanya, and you're doing incredible stuff. But how is it balancing your life? How is it integrating into your life? That's the world of Tikkun. That's the world that we're in. That's true Tikkun Olam. To take the light and integrate it. Now back to where we were talking about last week. The idea of unity. This explains things very well. You could only have unity when I can contain my light and realize that there's room for your light. But if my light is so on fire that I can't even balance myself, it's very hard for me to create space for the other. That's why often relationships of young people don't really last. Why? Because I'm not ready to create space for you. I'm still finding myself. It's not a bad thing, but that's the journey. I have to find myself. I have to find my journey. I have to find who I am. Where does Sinat Yisrael, where does hatred of one another come? It comes when each and every one of us, when a person is not able to integrate their own light, integrate their own uniqueness, be at peace with it, not be threatened by the other person. And I'm going to quote from some of the words of Rabbi Shalom Dober, who we were quoting from last week, who says this so well. He's talking about how hatred starts. And he says like this: the klipa of Midian, remember we said that the level that we're referring to, that level of ultimate hatred is the level of Midian. This is baseless hatred. It has no specific reason. It is not aroused because one has been harmed or opposed by another person in any particular way. As explained above, it is motivated by a person's fundamental self-orientation, which prevents him from bonding with another person. In other words, Tohu is, there's no space for the other. It's absolute self-orientation. It's all about me. And when there's all about me, I have no space for the other. Were the hatred to have a specific cause, it would be dependent on a specific attribute. In other words, my kindness and your, I don't like your energy, I don't like your kindness, I don't like your humility, whatever. But the Midian, the real hatred between Jews is when there's no specific detail, but rather the feeling of hatred that stems from the attribute of Gvura, of might, of Tohu, which is in a fallen state during to the shatter of vessels. What does that mean? As mentioned, in their source, the attributes of Tohu were holy, without any negative orientation. However, the shattering of the vessels highlighted their self-orientation and allowed for the possibility of evil to gain a foothold. So let's explore that. When that world of Tohu exploded, that's when evil was created. As long as Tohu was there, it was a lot of holy energy, but that couldn't get along. But that led to, because it couldn't get along, it led to evil. And that's where all the evil in this world is energized, is from the light of Tohu that broke out. And that's why we have to elevate the sparks. We have to go into this world and elevate it. Think about this. The whole creation of evil in this world, from a Kabbalistic perspective, only happened because of fighting. The source of evil in this world is disunity. The world of Tohu could not contain each other's light. It exploded. And from there, evil was created. At the heart of evil is disunity. And this is an incredible litmus test in general where you want to know where the truth is. You know, often there's politics in town, there's politics in the community, politics in families. And you're often torn, where's the right side? And here's a great litmus test. Ask yourself, which side has a bigger agenda of disunity? In other words, what's their agenda? If their agenda is to cause discord and unity, you can be guaranteed it leads to evil. Nothing of machlokes, nothing of division ever leads to holiness. The source of evil is disunity. If you see somebody else trying to keep the unity, then you know that at least there's something there. Even if they're not doing everything right, their heart's in the right place because they're trying to keep the unity. But if someone's trying to create variables or trying to create division, you can be guaranteed there's no holiness there, because holiness has no space in division. And let's explore what happens when you hate somebody in this kind of way, in this gevura, intense hatred. It says like this: the strife, contention, and hatred that stems from Midian does not arise from any specific point, but rather from the inability of one person to tolerate another, even if you don't know them and have never any dealings with them, finds it impossible to unite with them. It's not that it's a specific detail, I don't like something about them, I just can't stand it. That person dresses differently than me. Person just gets on my nerves. Person has a bad energy. You think it's because, I'm sophisticated, so I can't tolerate it. If you can't handle another Jew, and there's not even a good reason for it, that is the definition of sinas chinam. This is what is called baseless hatred. Zehu hanikra sinat chinam. One person hates another for no reason. At times, this hatred settles on a specific point. In other words, you find an excuse why you hate them. The person will feel that they have a reason to explain the hatred for their fellow man. In reality, however, it is only a rationalization that follows the fact. The specific reasons are not the actual cause of the hatred. It is only that he found a pretext or false charge to justify himself before others. However, it does not represent the true cause. Instead, this hatred arises solely from the inability to tolerate the other, and its cause is yeshus, or in English, self-concern, self-importance, self-idolization. He is important in his own eyes. And included in this concept is the fact that the person's self-concern, self-obsession, dominates every particular aspect of their life. That is Tohu. You want to know what Tohu is? It's all about you. My light, my energy. I spoke about this last week, but I want to bring it up again. I was talking to somebody recently, and they were telling me, in today's day and age, you have to live your truth. In today's day and age, people have to be true to themselves. Like everything in life, there's partial truth to that. The problem with that statement is, who said life is about you? Who said life's about living your truth? Where does that assumption come from? How do you know that? I have to live my truth. I have to be authentic. Of course, you should be authentic. But this, like, I have to go tell the whole world my authenticity. I have to share all my stuff with the world. Why? Why that self-obsession? Go do your job. Go live your life. When there's a self-centeredness, when I am the center of my world, that is why you cannot tolerate the other. Because of their ego, he does not leave room for anyone else. It's almost as if the other's existence is detracting from my own. The mere fact that you exist is a problem to me. Often you find this in Jewish communities when somebody shows up and looks different. Guy shows up with long payas, Streinman, or a Shetel, whatever, like they're straight out of a different town. And often it's like, people get agitated. The person never did anything to you. You don't know anything about them. You know, you watch Tissel, that's as much as you know. But it gets on your nerves. Why? It's almost as if that person's existence detracts from your own, makes you feel uncomfortable. If they've gone so far, maybe maybe they've got so far to the right, maybe I should be a little more. If it didn't make you feel uncomfortable with yourself, you wouldn't hate them. When you hate somebody, it's because somehow they're threatening you. And that's not a Tikkun perspective, that's a Tohu perspective. If each and every one of us is a threat to the other, if my success threatens you, if my davening from a different siddur than you threatens you and makes you uncomfortable, you're the problem, not me. If I'm threatened by you, I'm the problem. The mere fact that we cannot stand people who are different than us, people from a different social status than us, they're higher than us, they've done better financially, they've done less financially, they're outside our circle, etc., and they just get on us. It's all about us. It's me. I have not brought humility and balance into my life. I am still all about me. If I was less about me, I would be able to create space to love people on all social ladders, on all social status, on all walks of life. I have space and love for everyone. The fact that I can't, the fact that you threaten me is the biggest indication of my tohu, of my lack of integration, my lack of creating space for the other. A few weeks ago, I spoke to the grade 12s in King David, and I said the following, and I said it years ago to another group of grade 12. I said like this: my biggest prayer for each and every one of you is that in 20 years' time, you're all living happy relationships in your first marriage, and you're comfortable in your own skin. You know why? That's my biggest prayer. Because if we can live that, that means us and the people we marry are living a tikkun life. If we can build flourishing relationships with ourselves and with others in our adult life, that means we got it right. But if we did incredibly well in our talents or in our career, but we lost our balance as cause of it, you might be celebrated as a hero and a celebrity, but you have not lived the life of Tikkun. We are not here to live lives of Tohu. We're here to live lives of Tikkun. Yes, we need to use our talents, but not in a way that breaks the balance of our life, but in a way that enhances it, that adds light to us. So that's the message. We finish off just before Shavuot. Next week, Sunday night is Shavuot. God gave us the Torah in this world, not in the heaven. Torah lo b'shamayim, Torah is not in the heaven. Torah is in this world. What does that mean? Torah is here to make our lives enhanced in this world, in our reality, in our lives where we eat meals and where we have life, where we live life, not to escape life, to bring the light of Torah into our lives. Orot bikelim, bring the light into the vessel. If your light is making you break the vessel, then it's the wrong light. Work on the vessel. And if our vessels are so strong, but we have no light, then we have to bring more light. In other words, we're so comfortable in our physical world that our lives are not on fire, then we have to get that again. But take the light of Torah, take the light of Kabbalah that we're learning together, take the inspiration and bring it into real life, into relationships, into the nitty-gritty of technical life, into your emotions, into your anxiety, into your depression, into your joy, into your insecurities. Bring the light there. That's the point of Torah. That's the point of bringing the Torah down into this world. Otherwise, we would all be in heaven, learning Torah like angels. But that's not what we came to this world. We came to this world to take the most incredible, pristine, holy light of Torah and bring it into our technical, maybe even petty lives. Because that's what Hashem wants. The incredible balance of taking the light of Torah and bringing it into the world of Tikkun. Wishing each and every one of us a traditional blessing for Shavuot. Kabbalat HaTorah b'simcha pnimiyut. May we receive the Torah with joy and b'pnimiyut and internalize it, because that's really the message, to digest it. To don't only allow the Torah to be given to us, but to digest it, to allow it to transform us. Please God, it should happen this year. Please God, there should be peace in the Holy Land and only the best of us. Thank you, everybody, and Yom Yerushalayim Sameach. God bless you all. Thank you.